Hey everybody, I hope you all are doing well and welcome back to Whiskey Wonders. And today we are at one of the best Costco's on the West Coast for whiskey, at least in my humble opinion. It's one of the few Costco's that really does get those heavy hitter whiskeys, things like Pappies and Stags and Wellers from time to time. But today we don't see any of those big game bottles, but what we do see is some very interesting distillers editions for some of my favorite scotches. That is the Lagavulin Distillers Edition 2022 and the Oban Distillers Edition 2022 side by side and at MSRP, and really a whole bunch more. Now, before we get to the video, if you do like these videos, if you like the wonders, if you like the hauls, if you like the reviews, the unbottlings, the unboxings, the drink throughs, and really all the amazing stuff we got cooking up for you, and we have tons of amazing stuff cooking up for you, don't forget to like and subscribe because it does really help the channel to grow, and we are so thankful for that. But also, you get updates when our newest videos come out on Sundays and, sometimes in between. All right, now, let's get down to the video. So while we are waiting for the Wander Vision to get fired up, we might as well get a little warmed up here. And I think today what I'm going to be enjoying is something that is rather apropos, is going to be this Lagavulin Distillers Edition 2022. So let's see. Let's get this out of the box here. Yeah. Let's see if we can get a pop. Oh, wait. Turn it over. Both sides. All right, let's see if we can get a pop here. Hey, that's pretty good. It never disappoints. And get a little juice. Oh, yeah. And it's whiskey. Because let's face it, really, honestly, you can never drink too much of it. You can just drink it too fast. Cheers. Ooh, you can taste the distiller in there. All right, so let's get this wander started with the first of two offerings today from the supreme whiskey corporate overlord, at least for Scotch, Diageo, which is this Lagavulin Distillers Edition 2022. Now, a bit of an overview. Diageo has come out with a whole series of Distillers Edition for this year, for the Lagavulin as well as the Oban, like we'll see here shortly, but also for some of the other brands within the company's umbrella. So Colai, Talisker, and a couple other ones, they all have Distillers Editions as well. And really, these Distillers Editions are sort of like, the director's cut of a movie. For the most part, they are the same juice that you're going to get in a normal Lagavulin, for example, but they are slightly different. In this case, the Lagavulin DE 2022, and again, recently we did a full review on it, by the way. I'll put a link up here for it, so if you want to kind of get an in-depth idea of what the differences between the normal Lagavulin and the standard Lagavulin, we got right here, are, take a look at that. I'll put a link up here for that. But I'll also be drawing a lot of the tasting notes from that review as well. Now, I found the Lagavulin DE a nice diversion from the standard Lagavulin 16, but in all honesty, not enough in my mind to fully justify it to be a completely different bottle that is at almost twice the price. Also, given Diageo's modus operandi, I am certain that the DEs on all levels are basically money grabs for fanboys like myself, and I fell right into that trap. Now, this Lagavulin DE 2022 specifically, and most noticeably, does not have an age statement on it. So if we look at the standard Lagavulin, it says 16 on there, and then we look at the Distillers Edition, it is noticeably missing a 16 on there. I think there's really kind of two ways to go about thinking about this. First is that you have been scammed, right? They took off the years and they added in cheaper whiskey and they gave it a new label and they charged you more for it, which is one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is that the benefit of not having an age statement on it is that it allows the distiller to really blend the whiskey in a way that they want, maybe with younger whiskeys under 16, so they can get a profile that really matches what they were hoping to get and get a unique version of Lagavulin that also, happens to be less expensive and more profitable, Diageo and whatnot. Either way, the Lagavulin Distillers Edition is non-age statement, but in return, what you get is a whiskey that is aged in American oak and Pedro Jimenez casks, and you can see that right there. It says it on the label. It is double-barreled, meaning that it is first aged in American oak and then aged in PX sherry casks. And then one other interesting aspect of this is that the American barrels that it is aged in are alligator charred, meaning that when they burn the inside of the barrels, when they char the inside of the barrels, they char to the point where the wood starts to kind of come up like the scales on the back of an alligator. The price that we see here at the Costco in Morena Boulevard in Pacific Beach is at $114.99, which is pretty good, especially in comparison to what you would pay at Total Wine for $139.99, or a good amount less than what you're going to pay at Bevmo for $146.99. So it means that if we did end up buying this one at the Costco Morena Boulevard, we would have saved $25 or 21.74% off the closest price. But one thing that I would also like to note here is that we didn't get this one there. We actually got this one at the grand opening of Queen Creek in Arizona. And we picked this bottle up there, and it was only $99.99 earlier this year. So I'm not really sure if we had gotten it before. Maybe there's like a mid-year price spike, or if it's just a different price because it's a different state. But usually California is lower. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that there is that difference. Now, the ABV on this Distillers Edition 2022 is not really anything to write home about, right? It's at 43%, which you can see right there, which is pretty much standard for the line. The 16 is also at 43%, so you don't get any extra ABV on it. The tasting notes that I do have for it from our reviews, as I mentioned, put a link up here, is that you do get a lot of the classic Lagavulin flavor, things like brine and medicinal and fruit, which are very well balanced, but the mouthfeel is much silkier than the 16 and much less, I guess we call it like raucous. It's much less raucous and more refined and subdued than what you get in the 16. So I don't know if that's necessarily good because I like the raucousness, but you know, that's what you get with it. The review scores that I could find on the Lagavulin Distillers Edition 2022, on average, with mine tossed in the mix, brings it out to 84 points out of 100, which I think is fair. I think that's probably about where, you know, it should be if you take a general consensus on it. It just feels like, really honestly, like a low T version of the Lagavulin 16. And of course, there are appropriate times for that, but I don't think it's worth paying double the price for it. So that being said, at $114.99, the Lagavulin Distillers Edition 2022, it's going to be a pass. Next up is another scotch that is going to fall under Diageo's corporate hegemony, but this time around it is from the Highland. It's in fact a very popular standard line that is usually available at Costco pretty much year-round. We normally have one here, but I think I just recently finished off, which is going to be this Oban DE 2022. And now Oban is known to be one of the biggest distillers out there in the Scottish Highlands. And if the seagull on the cliffs on the silo is not a big enough indicator that it keeps a very seashell by the seashore flavored palate, this 2022 edition, though, like the Lagavulin, doesn't retain an age statement that the standard whiskey has, usually 14 years. But in return, what you do get is a version that is aged in American oak and finished in quote-unquote sherry casks. Now, I say quote-unquote because it's not actually in sherry casks, because only fortified wines from a very specific region of Europe are designated by their government, I guess, or the EU or whoever, the Grand Poobah of Europe, which one counts as sherry. So the technical term is Montilla Fino. But for all intents and purposes, except for the fact that it's not from that specific area of Europe, the sherry casks. So like the Lagavulin, this one is also double barreled, and the price that we see here at Costco is at $128.99, which is pretty good, especially considering that you can find it at Total Wine for $154.99. Or I think, no, this can't be true. You know what is true is that you can actually find it at Bevmo for less than at Total Wine, which is, I think, a first for the channel. You can find it at Bevmo for $148.99. So if we compare the price here at Costco to the next lowest price at Bevmo, which honestly, it sounds a little weird to even say it, then the Costco price still beats it out by $20 or 15.51%. The ABV on it is going to be, again, kind of at a very unimpressive, but a standard ABV at 43%, or that is 86 proof. In the tasting notes mention things like sea salt, white pepper, creaminess, grapes, yeah, I think that's right, apricot, pastry cream, and malty flavor. And the overall scores that I could find put it at around 85 points out of 100 for the Oban Distillers Edition. So if I were to make a final judgment on these two bottles, and I think the way that I would think about it is like this. Yes, they both are obviously money grabs by Diageo. I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about that. There's also all the creativity here of a corporate boardroom hosting leftovers night made from what they found in the corporate break room fridge. The trade-offs are the fact that there is no age statement, but what you get are what amount to minor changes to the whiskey that don't really add much more to the whiskey other than theatrical adornment. In my mind, that means that it doesn't really justify the much higher price. It's not any older, and the ABV isn't any higher than normal. So all the livery in the world and all the fancy bottlings and the cool boxes and, the fictitious titles that go with it, I don't think they're really going to fool the general whiskey public. And we can see that these two are not really that popular. They're not selling faster than the standard Lagavulin or the standard Oban, and there aren't really many reviews of them. And they're prevalent on the shelves. You can see them everywhere and get them at any point and any time. So no one's hoarding them. And out of the review scores that I could find, they ultimately come out in the garden variety. So, I guess that's my argument against it. But if I may say, as a person who did end up buying the Lagavulin Distillers Edition 2022, my argument is that, one, I love Lagavulin. I love both Lagavulins. I love Lagavulins in all their different shapes and sizes. Any of the versions they come out with. And I want to get one, at least, to have kind of a full collection, but also to get the additional perspective on the Lagavulin whiskey that, even if I disagree with them, I believe it's going to enhance the flavor for the standard Lagavulin. So in the longest possible way, what I'm saying is that these are both a pass, unless you're really into them, and then consider buying them. All right, so that is it for today's Whiskey Wanders at the Costco on Morena Boulevard in Pacific Beach, San Diego. And I really hope that you enjoyed this video. And in fact, if you enjoy all of our videos, whether it is the wanders or the hauls or the reviews or the unbottlings, the unboxings, the drink throughs, and kind of all the amazing stuff that we have cooking up for you. And we have tons of amazing stuff cooking up for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it does really help the channel to grow. So thankful. But also, I think that it is good for your whiskey mojo. It pleases the whiskey gods, and you get notifications when our newest videos come out on Sundays and sometimes in between. All right, now, before I go, just remember, if you do find a whiskey that you love, even if no one else does, just buy it. Because if you don't, somebody else surely will. In this case, it might even be me. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your week. I'm out, and adios.